Everybody, this is teaching presentation 4 by me, Caleb Cowan. It is our last presentation of the semester talking about chapters 12 and 13. Now, I do apologize for my voice. It is not cooperating with me today, so I may sound pretty monotone. Diving into chapter 12, we're going to talk about late adulthood. With late adulthood, we have age. Now, age is something that, of course, is a topic of conversation, seeing as its lifespan development. But what is the age for late adulthood? Well, it is seen as 60 and above. Um, with this age group, we start to see, as I'm sure you've heard the term, with age comes wisdom. But we also start to see ageism. Ageism is more or less a discrimination against the older group or older generation, saying they cannot perform set task in this specific job. That is typically where you see ageism. However, we also have respect for age in a lot of countries. This is typically seen in the eastern part of the world where the older you are in a company, the higher standing you're going to have. Same with the household status. The older you are, the more respect you're going to have in your household. But there are sub-stages of age. With that, we have the young old, the old, and the oldest old. The young old being 60 to 74, the old being 75 to 84, and the oldest old being 85 and up. Now, these two come hand in hand, your ADLs and functional age. Your functional age is essentially the age you reach that you can still perform your ADLs, which is your activities of daily living. Uh, these are going to be things such as brushing your teeth, eating food, getting yourself dressed. Um, it is how you can function in a day-to-day life. Whatever age you start to decline and are unable to do that anymore, that would the year prior would have been your functional age per se. With this age group, we start to see an age boom as of recent years. Nobody is having kids, to put it bluntly. The overall fertility rates have dropped, whether that be due to social pressures or the unwant to have kids due to economic situations. We're starting to see an increase in age, of course. 16 above is starting to be the primary population. With that, we have our OADR, old age dependency ratio, which in a population, the ratio of people age 65 and over to ages 20 to 64. That is starting to increase overall because we have more old people than ever. Nobody's replacing that generation. With age, we have development just like every stage of life. With this development, we see primary aging and secondary aging. Your primary aging is going to be the biological, natural path your body takes, your cells growing and dying. With secondary aging, this is going to be forced aging per se. This is going to determine, like, this is if you have bad eating habits, you maybe smoke or you drink a lot. This will determine how much faster your body will age. With that, our appearance start to change, of course. Our hair may start to thin. We also start to lose our hearing. Our eyesight starts to gradually get worse, if not gets worse faster. Um, and following this, excuse me, we go into memory. We have to talk about the mental aspects compared to the physical. With our mental side of things, our memory in itself doesn't see too much of a decline. However, our attention span starts to see a dramatic change. Our sustained and divided attention decreased dramatically. However, our procedural memory, if you recall, is basically our autopilot mode, stays the same if it doesn't lose a little bit of function. And our semantic memory, which is, our language retention, things along those lines, starts or maintains its natural course if it doesn't lose a little bit. However, in this age, we start to see something called the tip of the tongue effect, which is essentially, hey, I remember this information, I just cannot tell you it right now. It is somewhere in my brain. But interestingly enough, in this age, we see something called the reminiscence bump, which is, strangely enough, the fact that the older generation can remember the age 10 to 30. They can remember events better in those years than they can 30 to 50. Going into concept one, we're going to talk about biology, or the biological processes of death and aging. Uh, until recently, um, infancy was the life stage with the highest mortality rates. This was overall across the board. However, in recent years, it had become young adulthood, and the preteen area was starting to see higher mortality rates, and getting old was becoming a privilege, more or less. We were starting to see a lot of deaths caused by heart disease, stroke, cancer. We also started to see a lot more deaths by suicide. Um, this was, of course, causing the older generation to become more scarce. Going to concept two, we're going to be talking about death for the latter end of my presentation. It is the end of the line for most people unless you believe in an afterlife. With that, uh, at home is where most people find passing on to be the most appealing approach, surrounded by their loved ones going in their sleep. However, because in developed countries, the primary cause of death is not a disease and not just the body shutting down peacefully, it's cancer and heart disease, which leads to a slow and agonizing way to go out. With that, we have hospitals and hospice care, which cares for the older generation to make their final few years or final months or days or weeks more comfortable as they go. With that, there's euthanasia, which, if somebody is so disabled or so far gone, that they assist them in passing on so they do not suffer. Now, with death, of course, your loved ones are going to experience some sort of emotional response. That is typically seen in grief. With that, there's variations of grief. There is prolonged grief disorder, which is essentially you do not change after 6 months post death. You feel like a major part of your life is gone. Maybe a gap forever fills your soul, is a way that it was phrased. You feel like you're unable to move on past that moment of time. With grief, of course, there's the 5 stages of grief. There's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There's even anticipation, or anticipatory grief, which is you have accepted that they will pass and it's inevitable, and you just move on naturally. About concept four, we're going to split two viewpoints down the middle between childhood and adulthood. When children typically see death, they're going to see it quite a bit throughout their life. They see it as something taken from them. Take, for example, a bug is dead on the ground. They see the bug is no longer walking. Or maybe grandma has passed and they're no longer able to see grandma. Um, in in their later life, they'll start to realize that one day it happens to everybody and it will happen to them. Now, going into adulthood, we will start to see a lot of anxiety surrounding death. Uh, However, it is seen that people who have strong religious values have lower death anxiety due to the fact that they believe they will pass on into another life. We also see low anxiety as you get older, especially those who have accepted the life that they have lived and realized that they are content with who they are. With death, earlier we talked about grief, but we start to mourn. Mourning is typically the reflection on someone's life. It is not quite the same as grief. Um, there's different cultural impacts on maybe death or life after death that will determine how you may mourn. Take, for example, in New Orleans, it is very customary that when someone passes and the funeral happens, they play slow music up until the funeral or up until the burial site, and once they are buried, they leave the area playing loud, happy music, reflecting that their soul is passing on, and instead acknowledging the life they lived was one well spent. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you all have had a fantastic semester. As you could probably tell, I sound a whole lot better than what I did in the beginning, and that is because I decided to split this up into 2 days once I started feeling better.